to Bedtime Mysteries with Andreajohnsonbooks. I am Andrea Johnson, your host for this evening, and the purpose of this nightly interlude is to help my audience go to bed with a simple thought. Who is it? My short bedtime mysteries will leave you with many questions. You will always end the evening with something to ponder or decipher. Tonight, we continue with parallel reflections. A family man living an everyday life wakes up into something that cannot be explained. What has always been the same is now in question, as this very man finds himself the only suspect in a multiple homicide investigation. In our previous segment, Brad Foster was taken in for the murder of his entire family. But the question is, did he do it? Our story now takes us to the viewpoint of the camera lens, the one that captures the image it sees, and the one that watches but doesn't capture.
Charles Thompson sat in the police station, nervous and scared. He'd never been part of a real live murder investigation before. He'd only seen them on TV. But there was no mistaking what he had stumbled onto during that late-night walk home from work. As he sat now in the detective's office, his hands shaking in terror, he slowly began to retell the details of how he had come to catch the massacre of the Foster family on film, all while watching a cold and deadly detached Brad Foster performing each horrendous act. Charles had been in a hurry to get home. His car had broken down a few days ago, so taking the bus and train was a tedious task he'd always tried to avoid. His wife would complain again that he should have had it fixed by now, and he simply would ignore her and crash into the bed. After working all day as a call center manager and hearing customers complain all the time, he didn't want to come home and hear it from his wife. Completely lost in his thoughts, he'd almost walked right past it. But it was the light that caught his eye. He wasn't certain, but it was as if a flashlight beamed for a moment directly into his face. The apartment building was one he passed often, and the curtains were always closed with the windows down. But tonight, the curtain was open, the flashlight blinding his eye for a moment as he was just walking by. Frowning, Charles turned towards the window, his curiosity now stirred as he saw a man carrying a woman into a room. The man dropped her onto the floor and placed her next to two other bodies that appeared to be a boy and a girl. He then held up a knife strategically and knelt before each one, using the instrument to slice through the flesh of the motionless people. Realizing what he was seeing, Charles' heart leaped into his chest as he swiftly crouched before the window, afraid of being seen. But even in his stricken fear, his mind still held the common sense to somehow capture what he was witnessing. His hand trembling violently, he took his cell phone out and began to subtly record the man as he meticulously bent over his work. Charles forced his hand to remain still as he watched the man bury the knife into the flesh of the children, leaving only a smooth slice on the neck of the woman. After he was done, he stood up and looked directly at the window, his face highlighted in the moonlight. Charles panicked, moving quickly close to another window, hoping the man had not seen him. After a moment, he looked back, holding the camera. But the man had returned to his object of interest, dragging each body one by one and carrying them into separate rooms. Charles stopped recording and shoved the phone in his pocket, his eyes wild and shocked. He hunched low so as not to be seen and ran as fast as he could away from the building, all the while thinking at any given second the crazed man inside would come out and chase him down. But he didn't. Charles made it home, grabbed his wife, and went into hysterics over what he saw. It was his wife that calmed him down, watching the video with him, and immediately advised he should turn it into the police. And that was exactly what he'd done. Traveling to the station at the crack of dawn to deliver the evidence that would have every officer on duty and trained FBI investigator on site. It was said that Brad Foster's actions was the mark of a serial killer. They were now linking him to murders all across the city. And now with his evidence, the man didn't stand a chance. As Charles finished his story, there was a commotion outside the office. The detective opened the door. They were moving Brad Foster to a cell, and the entire station grew quiet as he passed. But Charles happened to catch his gaze as they led him away in handcuffs. It was the strangest thing, and Charles found it odd and grew very uncomfortable as a prickle of unease traveled down his spine. The look in Brad's eyes, it was not the gaze of a crazed serial killer. He had the undeniable appearance of an innocent man, a deer caught in the headlights.
I hope you enjoyed tonight's segment of Bedtime Mysteries with Andreajohnsonbooks, and I hope it left you with a question. What was the light that flashed into Charles' eyes and drew his attention to the window? And why is it that Brad Foster's gaze held the look of an innocent man, not a serial killer? Have you figured it out? Tune in next week for the continuation. Bedtime Mysteries can be seen Monday nights at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. Please like my page on Facebook at Andreajohnsonbooks. You can also follow me on Twitter at AuthorJohnson78 or on Instagram at Andrea the Creative Author. You can also visit my site at Andreajohnsonbooks.com. I wish you a good night, sleep tight, and don't leave your windows open tonight.